A new report suggests that former AEW World Tag Team Champion Ricky Starks has asked for his release from All Elite Wrestling. However, AEW President and CEO Tony Khan won't give it to him. We've got the viewership information for Week 2 of Monday Night Raw on Netflix, an update on Britt Baker's status with AEW, also details on PCO's issues with TNA Wrestling. Josh Alexander reportedly is expected to finish up with TNA Wrestling this week. Could the TNA Wrestling partnership with WWE hurt All Elite Wrestling in the future? We've got the ratings for Friday's edition of SmackDown on USA Network, the latest when it comes to plans for airing Grand Slam Australia. The date and location for AEW Dynasty 2025 has been revealed. An update on Becky Lynch's status with WWE. Christopher Daniels reportedly did not want to make his AEW in-ring retirement a big deal. An update on Blair Davenport's status on SmackDown. Ric Flair reportedly films a WWE appearance, and the very latest on Chris Bay's injury recovery. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Let's begin with the latest when it comes to the status of Ricky Starks in All Elite Wrestling. Now, Ricky Starks reportedly has asked for his release from All Elite Wrestling, but his request was not granted by AEW President and CEO Tony Khan. That is according to Ibo of Wrestle Purist and Self-Made PW, who stated during a several-minute discussion about Ricky Starks and his status in AEW and the industry as a whole that the former AEW World Tag Team Champion is currently waiting out the rest of his deal. Quote, at the end of the day, things happen to where he's on the outs with AEW right now. It is what it is. There's a lot of things. Most of it will never be reported. But ultimately, there's a falling out there and it is what it is. He's asked for his release. Tony won't give it to him and he's just going to wait the rest of his deal. He's going to stay relevant by working indie dates, and good for him. I'm happy for him. That's just going to be the situation in the meantime, Ibo said on the Wrestle Purist Raw review. After initially being a feature performer in the promotion, Ricky Starks has not appeared on AEW television since March of last year. Starks disappeared from TV after suffering a stinger, but quickly recovered from the issue, and AEW have simply not been using the 34-year-old. The expectation, of course, within the industry is that Ricky Starks will join WWE once his AEW contract expires. Reports in late 2024 noted that Starks is signed to AEW until the spring or summer of 2025. His contract was originally set to expire in 2024, but AEW activated an option year on Starks' contract. Ricky Starks has begun working on independent wrestling. He has wrestled for the likes of Glory Pro and House of Glory and also appeared in Defy. He was also planned to work for GCW, but those appearances were scrapped by AEW over comments made by Effie about Tony Khan and his father, Shad Khan. Now, a bit of an update here when it comes to the ratings, viewership figures, if you will, for Raw on Netflix. Now, of course, this is difficult to get since Netflix doesn't release this kind of information, but there's been a bit more of details about how many people tuned in for the second week of the show on the streaming platform. Now, Netflix TUDUM weekly rankings for the most watched content on the platform were released on Monday afternoon. It shows Raw on Netflix ranked number 4 for the second week in a row. Across the 7-day period from Monday, January 13th to Sunday, January 19th, the January 13th episode of Raw had 3.7 million views, which is simply the total number of hours viewed divided by the program's duration. As it's been noted before, this is essentially an average minute audience, AMA measurement, similar to the Nielsen method that we're familiar with. It's important to remember this is a global measurement, not a US-only measurement that we're used to with Nielsen, but globally this is similar to saying over 7 days, similar to a DVR plus 7 window. The show was watched by 3.7 million viewers. Now, that's down significantly from the premiere episode as expected. Netflix showed the same chart in the week prior that the first episode of Raw on the platform drew 5.9 million views globally, also ranking number 4 for that week. Therefore, week 2 was down by 37% from the premiere. Now, how does that compare to other memorable premieres of wrestling programs? For comparison, albeit using Nielsen US data only, the second episode of SmackDown on Fox in 2019 declined 26% from week 1 to week 2. The second episode of Dynamite on TNT, also in 2019, declined from 28% from week 1 to week 2. In both of those cases, though, it seemed to take up until about week 3 for these programs to settle into their normal range. So, again, we won't have always the data on this because it's not always going to be published, but if we get any more details, of course, we'll let you know in future videos. Now, Britt Baker, her status in AEW has been very much up in the air over the last few days. Former AEW Women's World Champion Dr. Britt Baker DMD has been with AEW since the very start of the company. But recent reports have suggested she may have wrestled her last match with AEW, as those within the organization are fed up with having to work with her. Dave Meltzer did some digging on the situation, and on a recent edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, claimed that Baker isn't leaving AEW anytime soon. But he added, there is some truth to how people feel about her. Quote, it's not a subject a lot of people wanted to talk about, but as far as you could go from here, but my basic impression is that it's a story that there's a kernel of truth to some of it, but it got blown way out of proportion, he said. Meltzer's co-host Brian Alvarez also asked about Baker's situation in AEW, and after talking to many people, he confirmed that she is still firmly with the company, but no one is sure why she isn't around. Quote, if you talk to a lot of people in AEW, obviously Britt Baker is polarizing. There are people who don't like Britt. The idea that nobody in the locker room likes Britt is absolutely not true. I talked to a lot of people today. At the end of the day, she's not being used right now, and most people don't know why, and ultimately it's Tony's decision whether she's going to be used or not. Of course, Baker was last seen in November of last year when she was setting up a feud with Serena Deeb for a rematch following their match on the October 2nd episode of AEW Dynamite. Now, speaking of sticky situations, PCO and TNA Wrestling, just what's going on between these two entities. Now, one of the biggest talking points coming out of the weekend saw the TNA Genesis and the People versus GCW pay-per-view was PCO shooting on TNA Wrestling at the GCW event. PCO won the kickoff Rumble match before smashing up his TNA Digital Media Championship belt, cutting a promo on TNA and being cut off before he could say anything else. There have been many different details reported as to how people feel about it, but on a recent edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer explained a potential reason why PCO was so frustrated. Quote, he was offered a new contract by TNA and he agreed to it verbally, but did not sign the contract, Meltzer explained. They came back and they said they were rescinding the offer and they offered him another contract. This is when they started at the end of the year. They started cost cutting and a lot of people were offered less money, and you saw several people leave for that. So they offered him less money. He agreed to it, even though it was less money he agreed to it. Then they came back again and they said, we're not renewing your contract, but they said, we want you to drop the title on the way out. GCW assumed PCO was going to lose the title at the upcoming San Antonio tapings, but PCO hadn't heard back from TNA since December. In terms of reactions from both companies, GCW has claimed they had no clue what PCO intended, assuming that he was simply running an angle that would have played out on TNA television, while TNA was reportedly livid with what happened and that no one expects PCO back in the company anytime soon. Now, in an update on this, he's also been removed from the TNA Wrestling roster page, so seemingly he is now done and ends his run in TNA after 2 years, with the former Ring of Honor World Champion joining the promotion back in 2022. Now, Josh Alexander, a bit of an update on his status with TNA Wrestling 2. TNA star Josh Alexander is thought to be leaving the company very soon, with the next set of Impact tapings representing his final dates with the company. That is according to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, who reported that Alexander's final dates are expected to be in San Antonio, Texas. TNA will air a live episode of Impact on Thursday, January 23rd, before holding TV tapings the following day. Alexander took part at TNA's Genesis pay-per-view over the weekend, losing to Mike Santana in an I Quit match. Despite currently being a heel, Alexander behaved sportingly after the match and congratulated Santana on his victory. Alexander then stated that he was quitting TNA, which was done to set up an angle on Thursday night's live Impact. Since announcing his intention to not sign a contract extension with TNA, Alexander has been speculatively linked with WWE and AEW, but his next destination remains to be seen. His contract expires in mid-February. Now, of course, a big story last week was the announcement of the multi-year partnership between WWE and TNA. But what effect could this have on AEW? Well, WWE isn't always known for playing nice with other wrestling companies over the years, but that has all changed with the official partnership with TNA Wrestling. NXT and TNA have traded talent since the summer of last year, but the partnership was made official in the lead up to TNA's Genesis pay-per-view over the weekend. Speaking about the partnership on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer was asked about what it could mean and what he found interesting interesting was the deal could prove to be a real problem from AEW from a perspective standpoint. Quote, I think where WWE comes in, you can see that there are all the podcasters that are anti-AEW podcasters, and they're already trying to declare TNA as number 2. So I think they want that thing to throw in, hey, TNA is number 2. And if they can get that perception of TNA being number 2 out there, if that's the perception out there, obviously it hurts AEW, end quote. Meltzer also explained that the WWE/TNA partnership can hurt AEW internationally, as TNA can use WWE's presence as a way to secure international TV deals ahead of AEW. What's more, some people could choose TNA over AEW, as they will now see it as a path to WWE in the future. TNA now has the unique distinction of being able to say that it's been partnered with both WWE and AEW in recent years. The company's AEW partnership began in December 2020 and ran through the COVID-19 pandemic, seeing Kenny Omega become the then Impact Wrestling World Champion at a time where former TNA president Scott D'Amore was amazed he could even wrestle given the extent of the physical condition he was in at the time. Now, we've got the ratings for Friday's edition of SmackDown on USA Network. Friday night's episode of SmackDown averaged 1.403 million viewers on USA, which is down over 2% from the previous week. It's the lowest audience for the show since December 20th. SmackDown topped all television with a 0.42 rating in the 18 to 49 demo. That's up 5% from last week and is the second highest rating the show has done in that category since the December 13th episode. The only major sports competition was an NBA game on ESPN that averaged 1.14 million viewers and a 0.36 in the 18 to 49 demo. As compared to the same week in 2024 when the show was still airing on Fox, the overall viewership was down 41.7%, while the 18 to 49 rating was down 32.3%. The college basketball game that aired in SmackDown's former time slot averaged 1.166 million viewers and a 0.21 in the 18 to 49 demo. That's down 53.4% in overall viewers and 66.1% in the 18 to 49 from what SmackDown did this time last year. Now, there's been so much debate, controversy, and really confusion about the status of AEW Grand Slam Australia. How is it going to air? When is it going to air? And All Elite Wrestling's scheduling conflict over the airing of Grand Slam Australia seemingly has now been resolved. It was announced on last week's edition of AEW Dynamite that Grand Slam Australia would air on TNT and Max at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, February 15th. This ultimately means the show won't be a pay-per-view and will air hours after the show takes place in Brisbane, Australia at 5:30 p.m. local time. Now, there was quickly an issue, however, as TNT's coverage of the NBA All-Star Weekend is scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern on February 15th. That issue has now been resolved, as Dave Meltzer reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that the plan is for Grand Slam Australia to air on TNT following the coverage of the NBA All-Star Weekend. Only one match has been announced for Grand Slam Australia so far. Mariah May will defend the AEW Women's World title against her former mentor Toni Storm, with Storm earning the title shot following her victory in the Casino Gauntlet match on January 15th. Now, an update here when it comes to the date and location for this year's Dynasty pay-per-view. Now, AEW Dynasty is coming to Philadelphia. AEW confirmed that AEW Dynasty will be held at the Ludacris Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on Sunday, April 6th. The Philadelphia Inquirer first reported the news. This will be AEW's first pay-per-view in Philadelphia. General on-sale tickets will be available on Monday, February 3rd. Now, Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor was held at the same venue in April of 2024, and AEW has held television tapings there. AEW added Dynasty to their pay-per-view schedule last year. The event was held in St. Louis on April 21st. In the main event, Swerve Strickland defeated Samoa Joe to win the AEW World Championship. Now, an update here when it comes to Becky Lynch's status with WWE. WWE superstar Becky Lynch has not been seen on television since the May 27th edition of Monday Night Raw, when she wrestled Liv Morgan for the Women's World Championship in a steel cage match. At the beginning of the year, it was speculated that the five-time Women's Champion would be returning on the first episode of Raw on Netflix, especially after she was seen in an advertisement for the show. But the rumors never came to fruition. Lynch's contract also expired last June, and she had become a free agent, but it was reported that Big Time Bex had signed a new contract with WWE at the beginning of the year and that her return was on the horizon. Fightful Select has now confirmed that Lynch is still with the company, but there is still uncertainty about her comeback date. Quote, she's under contract and has been for some time. She was not planned for the Raw on Netflix premiere. She wasn't at the show. As best as I know, in December, WrestleMania plans had not been nailed down for her, nor had a specific return date. So, seemingly, as of right now, we don't know when she's going to come back, but she is under contract. Now, Christopher Daniels, his in-ring career is now over. Although there's been no official announcement, it is believed that Christopher Daniels had his final ever professional wrestling match on this past Saturday's episode of AEW Collision. Daniels faced Hangman Page in a Texas death match on Collision, ultimately losing the match following a dead eye on a steel chair and a buckshot lariat to the back of the head from Hangman. After the match, Page added insult to injury by hitting Daniels with the Angel's wings. The Texas death match was not advertised or pushed as Daniels' retirement match by All Elite Wrestling, but the Wrestling Observer has reported that was because the Fallen Angel made the call not to make a big deal out of his career ending. Talent backstage at Thursday night's Collision taping were under the impression that Daniels was retiring, and the 54-year-old was very emotional when he arrived backstage following his match. Daniels will reportedly be a guest on Talk Is Jericho this week to discuss his retirement. Now, Blair Davenport, there have been quite a few reports, haven't there, about WWE's plans to use her moving forward. Now, WWE are still reportedly planning to utilize Blair Davenport following Friday Night SmackDown's move to 3 hours on January 3rd. Davenport has seldom been used on SmackDown since she moved to the main roster in May of last year. It took a month for Davenport to have her first match on the Blue brand, and she's only had 4 more televised matches since then. Davenport hasn't wrestled at all since November 22nd. Dr. Chris Featherstone of Sportskeeda reported in late 2024 that Davenport was set to be one of the beneficiaries of SmackDown moving to 3 hours in the new year, and she would be in line for a push. That push is yet to play out on television, but Featherstone has claimed on X that WWE Creative are deciding on the right story to properly showcase Davenport. Quote, "Update on Davenport, the right story will arise where she will shine. Landscape on SmackDown is very valuable. She has been in discussions as someone to benefit from the 3-hour format, so they're working on the right story to insert her in so she can be properly showcased." Ric Flair. Just what is going on with Ric Flair and his status with WWE? Well, the WWE LFG series planned for A&E will already feature The Undertaker, Mickie James, Booker T, and Bubba Ray Dudley, and a certain 16-time world champion is also set to appear on the show. According to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, Ric Flair filmed an appearance on WWE LFG earlier this month at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. How exactly Flair will be utilized on the show is unknown. WWE LFG will see legends of the company mentor aspiring wrestlers as they compete for WWE contracts. Matches have been taped for WWE LFG before episodes of NXT at the Performance Center since late 2024. One name who will be part of the series is Elijah Holyfield, the son of boxing legend Evander Holyfield. Flair has not appeared on WWE programming since he was granted his release from the company back in 2021. Flair has since worked for All Elite Wrestling as he was involved in Sting's retirement tour, but the Nature Boy has not been on AEW television since Sting retired at Revolution 2024. WWE LFG may not be Flair's only appearance for WWE in the near future. Reports in recent weeks have noted there have been talks within WWE about potentially bringing in Flair for an appearance at the Royal Rumble on February 1st. And finally, hopefully some positive news when it comes to the injury recovery of Chris Bay. Rob Van Dam has shared an update on TNA wrestling star Chris Bay, with RVD believing Bay will make a full comeback from a serious injury. Bay has been out of action since sustaining a serious neck injury during a tag team match with the Hardys at a TNA Impact taping in October of 2024. Whilst the nature of the injury has not been previously disclosed, Van Dam mentioned on his one-of-a-kind podcast that the Ultimate Finesser suffered a broken neck. He said, quote, "Chris Bay happens to live very close to us. Katie and I went to visit him because he made it home. He was stuck in the hospital for like 2 months. He had a match, if you don't know, with the Hardy Boys. I know very little about it, but they were going for a move that didn't work out safely, and Chris broke his neck, and then he was paralyzed," stated Van Dam. Van Dam continued, quote, "I don't know how much we should talk about really, but let me just say that he's going to wait until he's ready to talk. Of course, I invited him on here. He is much better than I imagined and much better than when he was paralyzed. So he's not paralyzed anymore and he's getting everything back. He's going to make a comeback too, a full comeback. I'm sure of it, but it's going to be a long journey and we'll probably check in with him a lot because, like I said, he lives really close." Of course, best wishes go out to Chris Bay and hopefully he makes a full recovery. But there you go, guys. The latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.